Dear learners, I welcome you all to this course on understanding human rights. We have been discussing the contemporary discourse or the contemporary issues of human rights. And in this discussion, in our last lecture, we were talking about how the arms race or the armament is responsible for violation of human rights. While we also shared the data, we also shared the statistics how the states are, selling weapons without caring for to whom they are selling. It is of course the profit motive is always there, and that's why we will find even the states who have very good record of human rights, they have been responsible for selling uh, arms and weapons to the countries who have very bad record of human rights. So because of that, many human rights organizations blame these states that while selling their weapons or supplying their weapons to these states, they never care that these states may violate the rights of their own citizens, or these states may aid and abet terrorism in other states of the world, and they may disturb the peace and tranquility in the international arena. Now, what is the argument you will find most of the time what the state are saying? We have been discussing that the state have been using violence. State is of course the organizer of violence. State uses organized violence, and that is why in most of the cases you will find a state is not only protector but it is also a violator of human rights. So what are the arguments in favor of the state's supremacy or state power to use legitimate force? So a state and monopoly over means of destruction that we are going to discuss. Traditionally, states have claimed a monopoly over the legitimate use of force within their territories because the state are, according to the principle of sovereignty, state are internally supreme. And that's why it is also argued that if a state is not given the power to use force, then society will become, society will lapse into anarchy. Law and order will be a major challenge. So that is why it cannot be denied that the state should be given power, some kind of power to use violence against those who are trying to disturb the peace and order of the society. It cannot be denied that this is needed. But what happens that when the states are claiming monopoly over means of destruction, this principle often referred to as the Weberian state monopoly of violence. It grants them sole authority over the means of destruction, including firearms, military equipment, and increasingly sophisticated weaponry. So it starts right from the pistol, rifles, and guns, etc., to the conventional weapons, and then to sophisticated weapons, even the weapons of mass destruction. While this monopoly serves the purpose of maintaining internal order and defending national security, it also raises significant concerns in the context of human rights and potential misuse. So, if the states are going to have this kind of approach that, right from the firearms to the sophisticated weapons, even intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons, all if they are having or they are trying to possess, though you can understand what may happen. Now, what we should know that what is happening, what kind of weapons these countries are trying to acquire. It is not only the conventional weapons, but now we are entering into, or we have already entered into the age of overkill, where the states have the power to annihilate, you know, the entire population of a country. So, nuclear weapons, first of all, the data driven concern that we should have, first of all, nuclear weapons. As you all know, that nuclear weapons are the most destructive weapons and they are weapons of mass destruction. In the history of humankind, you will find nuclear weapons were used by only one country, and that is the United States of America. It was used only against Japan on 6th and 9th August 1945. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities, were completely destroyed. But you see, from 1945 onward, the memories are still fresh in the mind of the people that the destruction it can wrought about. So, you can understand how destructive this weapon is, the weapon of mass destruction, that is nuclear weapon. As of 2022, you see that this is the data from 2022. The bulletin of the atomic scientist doomsday clock remains at 100 seconds to midnight, signifying the continued threat posed by nuclear weapons. Additionally, the Federation of American Scientists estimates that there are currently over 13,000 nuclear weapons in existence worldwide, highlighting the potential for catastrophic consequences in the event of their use. You see, 13,000. Still, you should remember that this data, how accurate the data is, it is very difficult to know, because the nuclear programs are mostly clandestine programs, and the international community doesn't know. But still, you will find that whatever the sources of information we have to trust, and that the Federation of American Scientists estimate that there are currently over 13,000 nuclear weapons. Keep in mind, the very production of these weapons, they lead to at different stages, from enrichment of uranium and thorium to different stages of the production of the weapons. At every stage, you will find some kind of rights are violated, threatening the right to life and many other rights of the people. So, and the second thing that we have to remember, that these weapons that are there, they are basically 100 times more destructive than those were used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And they are 13,000, approximately 30,000. And you see the country's profile. Countries, Russia, for example, is supposed to have 5,997. It all depends upon what kind of source you are quoting. So that is why you cannot say that this is the only source which is the most authentic. So in many other sources, you will find more weapons will be shown in the account of Russia, but you will find number of nuclear warheads in Russia is 5,000. It is 997. It is 6,000. You can say. United States of America, 5,428. China, 410. France, 290. United Kingdom, 225. Pakistan, 170. India, 164. Israel, 90. North Korea, 30. So you can see, this is the position. If the weapons are like this, these weapons, keep in mind, all these weapons, they are 100 times more destructive than the bomb that were used in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So what kind of destruction they can brought about in the world, we can imagine. Countries with the highest military spending. With this, you should also know that, what kind of amount the various countries are spending on the acquisition, development, or production of weapons. So you'll find we have already given this data here. So the United States has the largest military budget, spending $876.9 billion. China has the second largest military budget with a budget of $292 billion. Russia spends 86.4 billion on its military, while India allocates 81.4 billion. Saudi Arabia has the fifth largest military budget. These are the countries who are who are spending a lot of money on defense. It all depends upon what kind of challenges the countries are facing. So, for example, India is a country which is surrounded by two hostile powers, China and Pakistan, and both are nuclear powers. So that is why you can understand the security concern of India. And this is the reason that not only hostile powers are there, but the hostile powers with nuclear arsenal, they are there. So this is the reason that the security concern of India can be understood, and because of that, you will find when the sense of mutual uh, insecurity and suspicion is there, we will find countries will try to acquire more and more weapons. So that is why they are spending a lot of money on weaponization, or producing and buying weapons. Now we are coming back to the state of the organizer of violence, a critical lens. You know, critics argue that the very existence of powerful militaries positions the state as an organizer of violence, potentially undermining its commitment to upholding human rights. So basically, you see, Max Weber and other thinkers, they have already highlighted how the state uses organized violence, or a state as the organizer of violence. This perspective highlights the inherent tension between the state's role in maintaining security and its responsibility to protect human rights. So, what many a time you'll find states are violating human rights in the name of national security. Uh, so, the human rights activist and the scholar they argue there is no conflict between national security and human rights. By protecting human rights of its own people and by respecting the human rights of others, the state is basically ensuring the national security or security of all its individual citizens, and whether it is internally or externally. But this argument does not go well with the states, and that is why most of or almost all the states, they think that it is their fundamental right, agreed upon principle, that they have legitimate right to use, organized violence. The cost of war project at Brown University estimates that between 2001 and 2021, over 900,000 people have been directly killed in US led post 9/11 wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, with millions were displaced and injured. The organized use of violence, or the organized violence being used. Additionally, in Airwars Research Collective reports that between 2014 and 2022, US led airstrikes in those nations and Syria resulted in an estimated civilian death toll ranging from 10,900 to 16,000. So, leading to civilian casualties. And the state justifying the use of weapons and civilian casualties, you see, and that such a large number, 16,000 or 10,900, you see, it is at collateral damage. The collateral damage means, for killing some terrorist, you are killing many civilians, innocent people. The innocent people who may themselves be the victim of terrorism, subjugated people, but they are being also killed in the attacks. So that way, this indiscriminate use of the means of violence is something that has become a cause of concern for human rights fraternity. The United Kingdom, a major arms exporter, has been criticized for supplying weapons to countries with documented histories of human rights violation. As per the reports, UK licensed 16.8 billion euro of arms to countries with poor human rights record. So this is what we see, that this 16.8 million pound, that is being used. So 16.8 billion pound was spent by the of arms countries to poor human rights record. So this is the what United Kingdom has done, which has a better human rights record. If you see internally, it is appreciated for maintaining very good human records for its own citizens. But usually supply of arms and weapons to other countries who have poor human rights record, it has been criticized. The UK government has already admitted that a Saudi-led coalition has attacked Yemen using weapons made by British companies, with the UK supplying more than half of combat aircraft used by Middle East kingdom for its bombing raids. These statistics raise serious concern about the human cost of state-sanctioned violence, even in interventions purportedly aimed at promoting security. Another argument that is often justified, another argument that is often used by the people, that there is a constant struggle for power among states, and there is mutual suspicion and sense of security. And here we can find that the realist perspective, which is a very important theory of international relations, that highlights that there is a perpetual conflict or competition in the international arena, and that's why all the states they try to acquire more and more military capabilities so that they can defend themselves. So the realist perspective in international relations paints a stark picture of the world stage, where states driven by self-interest and fear of an ever-present threat engage in a relentless struggle for power. There is constant struggle for power, perpetual struggle for power among nations in the international arena. When there is a constant struggle, countries are trying to expand their power. The countries who are already powerful, they want to maintain their power. The countries who are weak, they try to become stronger. So ultimately, it is power that is driving, the power-driven international relations we will find. So when there is a constant struggle for power among nations, it is also the title of the book of H.G. Morgenthau. Uh, so you'll find the realist perspective will say that there is not only constant struggle for power, but a kind of anarchy prevails in the international arena. There is a kind of anarchy. It means that the international law is a weak law. Not only international law is a weak law, but you will find that the bodies like United Nations, they are helpless when the states are engaging in violence. The United Nations cannot use force. So ultimately, under this kind of circumstances, what happens when the anarchic international relations is there, and there is, mutual suspicion and doubt, then the states will try to acquire weapons, and ultimately that will lead to many problems. This perceived competition, fueled by mutual suspicion and insecurity, often manifest in the form of arms races, with states amassing increasingly sophisticated weaponry to deter potential aggression from others. So, this mutual suspicion and doubt, or the sense of insecurity, that always leads to what? A state try to rely upon their own military preparedness, because they know that in the international arena it is self-help that is the most important thing according to realist perspective. So, the survival is the main challenge for all the states, and just for their survival, they have to rely upon their military preparedness. And that's why it includes buying of arms, production of arms, acquisition of arms, all. The fact sheet published in 2023 by the Stockholm International Peace Institute has reported that world military expenditure rose by 3.7% in real terms in 2022 to reach a record high of $2,240 billion. You see, this is the problem that this huge amount, a lot of money, is being spent on military preparedness. Global spending grew by 19% over the decade 2013 and 2022, and has risen every year since 2015. So Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a major driver of the growth in spending in 2022. Military expenditure in Europe rose by 13% during the year, which was the largest annual increase in the total European spending in the post-Cold War era. So, this kind of situation, for example, Russia-Ukraine war, that had also developed a sense of insecurity in the minds of the leaders of the European countries, or the countries that are, adjacent to the Russian Federation. And this is the reason that you'll find there is a lot of increase. So that kind of situation may arise. This is the reason that, for example, Arab-Israel conflict, for example, you see war in Syria, or in Yemen, that has also led to a lot of weaponization of the Middle East. So the Middle East has been also weaponized because of this kind of perpetual tension that we see over there. The issue of arms proliferation is a complex and multifaceted one with significant implications for global security and human rights. Now we are here global military spending, that you can see that how the various countries are spending a lot of money on defense. Besides that, you can also find here the report how these countries like United States, China, India, the United Kingdom, Russia, how much they are spending. These figures showcase the concentration of military spending among a select few countries, raising concerns about potential imbalances in global power dynamics. The Middle East region, historically characterized by conflictual relations and competing interests, witnessed a 6.1% increase in military spending in 2023, amounting to 672 billion. So, this data is already before you. You can see, how the countries are driven towards militarization, or spending a lot of, money on defense, or, their military expenditure is, increasing day by day. Now, Amnesty International and campaign of arms control. You'll find that Amnesty International, as you know, it is one of the uh, international human rights organizations, non-governmental, of course, which does not accept money from the corporate sector, and it tries to work impartially and independently. So, Amnesty International, a renowned human rights organization which also got Nobel Peace Prize, has established itself as a leading voice in advocating for stricter arms control measures. Earlier Amnesty International started from the what is called the release of prisoners of conscience, and now it has led many campaigns. For example, abolition of death penalty campaign, and one of the campaigns that Amnesty International has been launching and trying to popularize is arms control measures. Their campaign for arms control plays a crucial role in promoting responsible arms trade practices, upholding human rights, and fostering a more peaceful world. Since the early 1990s, Amnesty International has been at the forefront of the campaign for an arms trade treaty. This treaty, adopted in 2014 and ratified by over 113 states of February 2024, establishes a legally binding framework for regulating the international trade of conventional weapons. It is, of course, a significant development in this direction. Core values. Amnesty International commitment to arms control stems from its core value of human dignity, equality, and non discrimination. The organization recognizes that the irresponsible flow of arms fuels human rights abuses, undermines peace and security, and disproportionately impacts civilians, particularly women and children. So, this you see the various dimensions of human rights violations are involved here because of this arms trade. So that is why it has been emphasizing on, the stricter regulation of the arms trade. Now, after this, having discussed all these things, first of all, we have to recapitulate what we discussed, and then we are going to conclude. It is rightly said that weapons not only make war politically probable, but physically possible. You see, that is the thing, that it is the very availability of weapons, or the acquisition of weapons, production of weapons, purchase of weapons. Why they are bad? It is rightly said that weapons not only make war politically probable but physically possible. When the arms and weapons are there, a state will get emboldened, and there are chances. Political probability is also there, but at the same time, war becomes physically possible because of the possession of arms. Production, acquisition, and possession of arms pose serious threat to international peace and security. First of all, that is the first threat. So if the international peace and security is violated or disturbed, then all human rights, from right to life to freedom of expression, etc., they all will be affected. So that is why this production, acquisition, and possession of arms by the countries, that is leading to a threat to international peace and security. Regional and local peace is also affected by arms and weapons. Gun violence is becoming a major problem in all societies. So you'll find every day uh, reports in the newspapers or on the TV channels that the people indiscriminate firing in the clubs or in the bars or in the mosque or in the churches or in the temples, whatever you see, that is there. And ultimately, why? Because the arms are easily available. Arms are not toys, but they are easily available. When the people have access to arms and weapons, any person who is a maniac, any person who is psychologically disturbed, any person who is having some kind of grievances, it may be perceived grievances, but he or she can have gun or weapons and kill many people. Helpless, innocent people, enjoying their life, studying in schools, for example, children are killed. So ultimately, you see the very availability of arms or the people's easy access to gun and arms, that creates a lot of problem. The sale and purchase of arms contribute to terrorism and insurgency. This is also a very important factor to analyze. that we have already found that terrorism and counter-terrorism, they are violating human rights. So how terrorists are getting these weapons? The terrorists are getting these weapons because the states are ready to supply weapons to them. So when the terrorism itself becomes a proxy war, or non-conventional war by the you know by the countries who are trying to adversely affect their adversaries. So in this kind of situation, you will find that terrorist or the insurgent groups, they are also they are also having access to these kind of weapons and arms, and they go for bombing, they go for killing, kidnapping, murder, and whatnot. Arms and weapons pose a serious threat to most basic human rights, that is right to life, liberty, and peace. So you'll find that the very availability of arms, it is not only in the state. At least a state can be held responsible. There is some kind of rule of law. A state, for example, policemen are not killing everybody. Security agencies are not killing everybody. But if the people, for example, criminals, for example, the gangs, if they are getting access to weapons and arms, especially the small arms, firearms, what kind of situation they create in many many cities and countries, that we can understand, from Mexico to many other violent prone countries that we have already been watching on the TV and all. So basically, what happens that the arms and weapons pose a serious threat to the most basic human right, that is right to life, liberty, and peace. So, because of this, we will find that the global arms trade, that is something that is becoming a threat to international peace and security. It is also becoming a threat to most basic human rights. But there are many intricacies that are involved. For example, you will find there are many treaties. For example, there are treaties at the international level against biological weapons, against chemical weapons, but still you will find there are countries who have biological and chemical weapons. You have a treaty, they are nuclear non-proliferation treaty, for example. You have comprehensive test ban treaty, for example, CTBT. You have limited test ban treaty, for example. All these treaties are there, but despite these, what happens that the CTBT itself, it has already identified around 44 countries who are nuclear capable states. For example, about Japan itself, it is said that Japan is just a screwdriver turn away from nuclear bombs. So the military, the nuclear capabilities of the state, you can see, they may have not acquired, but they can acquire it at any time. So ultimately, you just imagine a world where 50 countries with a lot of disputes, many many disputes with their neighboring countries or on several other issues. If there are 50 countries with nuclear bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons, if they are there, what may happen to the to our planet? So this is the reason, that is why it has become a genuine concern, and that's why the arms reduction treaties are being advanced. That's why it is being said that the arms control must be the norm of the day. United Nations, regional organizations, non-governmental organizations, and the people, they all are to be sensitized that arms and weapons are posing threat to most basic human rights of all the people. Also, it is observed that the many treaties, you find they are discriminatory. For example, comprehensive test ban treaty, it is not comprehensive in the real sense of the term, as it does not include what is called computer simulation technique. Similarly, non-proliferation treaty, you'll find it is again discriminatory, which is recognizing the countries who had developed nuclear bomb by 1965, but the countries who have not, who were not declared, means they just got late in developing nuclear bomb. So that is why they are not the legitimate possessor of nuclear bomb. So that legitimacy, a policy of nuclear apartheid or nuclear imperialism that we are witnessing in the international arena, that is also responsible for this kind of concern in the uh, international arena. So that's why we can conclude our lecture on the point that arms race, armament, they are a threat to most basic human rights of the people. They are a threat to international peace and security, and the possession of small arms, especially firearms, uh, by the people, gangs, criminals, that is leading to colossal violation of human rights all over the world. And therefore, it is right time, high time that the people all over the world, people across the globe, they must be sensitized about how this arms and weapons are threatening the human rights of the people. Thank you very much.